Hello class, this is Mr. Lehman. I'm going to talk to you today about lesson 11, which we viewed the different atomic models and we discussed these. And it's important that we study models because atoms are so tiny that we cannot see them with our very own eyes, even using a light microscope. And so we only can observe them using special electron microscopes. And very few people have access to those, and so therefore we use models. And so the very first model was proposed by John Dalton, and this was way back in 1803. And John Dalton proposed that everything is made out of atoms. All of matter, that is made out of atoms. And he proposed that atoms are like little tiny bowling balls, little solid spheres, and that they were indivisible. So the whole word atom comes from the Greek word atomos, which means indivisible, indestructible. And so we now know that's not true, that atoms aren't these solid spheres, but instead we know that atoms are made out of smaller things, protons, neutrons, and electrons. And so I want to walk you through just a little bit of lesson 11 today, help you gain a better understanding of the experiments on hand. And so the next model didn't come for about another a little over 90 years. We're looking at 1897. J.J. Thomson proposed the Plum pudding model. And the reason why he proposed this model is that he saw that using his cathode ray tube, he saw that using a high voltage source, he could shoot these negative particles from one side of the tube to the other, and he found out that they had a negative charge by putting them up to a magnet. And the magnet either attracted or repelled the charge based on which end of the magnet was being held up to the tube. And so then he proposed that atoms are actually made up of smaller things, and these things are these little electrons. And these electrons float around in this pudding, and so he thought the electrons were like little raisins, little fruit, little plums floating around in a pudding that could easily be separated from the atom. And that theory held true, held up for about 12, 15 years until Ernest Rutherford came along. And in about 1910, 1911, Ernest Rutherford performed the gold foil experiment. And so this is the experiment you definitely should know inside and out for the quiz and also our test. And so here he shot these alpha particles. And remember, alpha particles are simply 2 protons and 2 neutrons. And so he fired these radioactive, from this radioactive source, he fired these alpha particles at this very thin sheet of gold foil. And he expected all the atoms, all the particles, just to go straight through. But he noticed every so often some got deflected backwards or to the side. And so he proposed that they must be hitting something dense. And also, because of the way they're reflecting, they must be hitting something that's dense and also small and also positively charged. And so Rutherford proposed the nuclear model. And in the nuclear model, we had a very tiny nucleus in the center, and then the electrons were found outside the nucleus.